Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Oscar. Trevor here. I am joined by Sam coming on with us, and we are talking about Jane Schoenbrun's newest project, I Saw the TV Glow. We are a bit late on this one. I suppose this came out at Sundance, and then it was out in theaters for a bit, but it did not screen within a 100-mile radius of me, which I was very upset about. But I watched it. I literally waited until it was midnight, and then rented it at like 12:01. Yeah, so I've been very excited about this film for a while. We're All Going to the World's Fair, I think, is one of the best films of the decade, and since this was announced like 2 years ago, I've been excited about it. Massive fan of Jane Schoenbrun, and it somehow exceeded all of those expectations for me. So yeah, but I don't know where were you at coming into this film?
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect because it looked interesting. The trailer looked good. I don't really know what to make of World's Fair. I think it's definitely I definitely think that it has a specific vision that it executed in the way that the director intended it. I can't really say that there's anything wrong with it, but I found it kind of stagnant in its approach, intentionally so. But
Mhm.
watching it, I felt kind of stuck and not in a way that I was like immersed in it. But I think that's, has to do with a bunch of different things beyond intentions. Also, clearly budgetary restrictions. There's
Sure.
only one real actor in the movie, whatever. But this movie definitely felt like Jane was actually in full control of this movie and was given the proper resources to make something really powerful. And I liked this movie a lot more than I liked World's Fair. I think that I should give that movie another try just to
I
see, to
want I
really
want you
go.
to rewatch it. I
Yeah, I
think
think
it's
I
I
would
don't think that you'll
appreciate
like
it
it as
more.
much as me. I don't think you'll like it as much as me. Like for me, it's a perfect 10 out of 10. I think it's incredible. I don't think you'll be quite there with it, but I do think that you'll appreciate it a lot more in rewatch. But yeah,
Yeah,
that being said, I do prefer TV Glow.
it's a
Because
lot more expansive, and I think that
yeah.
I describe this movie as like perfect for like chronically online Midwestern people who are depressed, and I think that I think that the we're all going to the World's Fair is kind of viewing them through online, like
Hmm.
view perspective through an online perspective, which like I don't know, it was a little too meta, and this was like seeing that from a real perspective,
This
and
this was this was very
online
visceral.
because it's yeah, exactly, but
World's Fair is visceral in like a more indirect way, whereas this is like in your face visceral. So yeah,
yeah.
for those unaware, it's about teenager named Owen who connects with this other girl named Maddie over this TV show called The Pink Opaque, and basically it's a way
I
for
would
them.
watch The Pink Opaque.
I would also watch the Pink Fake, but it feels very Lynchian. But
Yeah.
it's basically a way that they're able to kind of disconnect from their world and in reality and kind of live in this fantasy that feels better than real life for whatever reason. For them, they're
Well, I
in
mean, for a lot of
different.
reasons. Their life
Right.
is really stagnant, depressing. They don't have they
They
have
feel
weird
stuck.
relationships with their families. They don't really have friends at school. Like there's a lot of reasons why. I
Yeah.
just I like how the interactions between the characters aren't really trying to do anything specifically. Like between the two main characters, their relationship is so weird. From the beginning, you get a sense of a lot of random moments and a lot of naturally very awkward moments between these two very awkward people, one of which is emotionally very awkward, and one of them is so dry in the way that they talk that it becomes awkward. And this behavior clashing is kind of fascinating to watch because you see two people who are like almost beyond antisocial being
Mhm.
social with one another, and a lot of traditional cinematic rules and even just like social restrictions and expectations are, I wouldn't say like dismantled, but kind of put in an awkward position where you don't even have an expectation before viewing
Yeah.
their first interaction that it's going to go even somewhat normally.
It
The tone of
it
this film
feels
is
very
established. Yeah.
revolutionary, like, formally, like, genuinely
Yeah.
feels like a formal revolution when it comes to not only horror, but a coming of age project, like, because I think that you can describe this as a coming of age film, but I feel like it's almost like an anti coming of age film, like, it's about the horrors of never coming of age, and never
Yeah.
actually completing, because in a coming of age film you always have this journey where they eventually find who they are. And kind of the horror with this film, and we are going to talk about spoilers with it, so if you haven't seen this film, please watch it. I cannot recommend watching it enough. But we are going to get into spoilers. But where we eventually find Owen is, like, they never grew up. And they never actually were able to find who they were. And it's just the horrors of being stuck in this like shell of a person and never really understanding what's inside of you, which we see portrayed in this almost like horrific but oddly cathartic way, as we see him literally, look inside, and try to find themselves through that. Which, yeah, again, I found this film weird. Like, it is very disturbing in that way, in how it flips the genre convention of coming of age and
But
horror
not
against you.
scary.
But
Not
no,
like
it
not
isn't
like
scary. But
scary to watch.
I did
Yeah.
feel like it was very cathartic as well. And just looking at the pink opaque, which I think is obviously very, very central to the film. And I think you can read it on a surface level about how queer people do, place. I think everybody places a lot of their identity into the media they consume, even more than they realize. Like, even like a sports team that you follow, right? Like, that's still like, it's something that you are consuming. It is something that you're actively following media around, right? But I think queer people in particular, because there can be this ostracization from society, and it is an easy way to connect with like-minded people, through media. I've definitely found that. I mean, obviously, like, just to get meta, like with this channel, like I met Thomas through a show that we both watched called the Movie Trivia Schmodown, right? And that's how we became friends, just online when we were like 14 years old, an ocean away from each other. And we just connected over this one thing we met on like Reddit. And then that's obviously grown into this. Like, I met you on a Discord call because we were talking about Babylon. Like, I met Jack talking about like the Oscars on Twitter. So like, it is very much this connective thing where it can draw people together. And I think that can be a beautiful thing, but it can also feel like you are being, like, you can feel like you're stuck when almost that becomes too much a part of yourself in that media. Because I do think that there is a more subliminal reading to that, where it isn't just that surface level, oh, queer people connect through media, right? It is this idea of, wanting just anything to escape from having to feel like yourself, and wanting anything to put yourself into that is like this tangible, thing that you can escape from the tangibilities of your life, and this thing that in reality is intangible, but it can feel like it's tangible when you look into it. I mean, I just brought up Babylon, like that the whole idea behind Babylon is like creating art that's tangible, that can like live past you, and it isn't about necessarily the people who make it. It's about the tangibility of this art and the ideas that ride with that. And I feel like TV Glow, it's engaging with a lot of those same ideas, and about how these tangible, the themes and the ideas, like, even it can expand beyond what the artist even, intended with it. There's so many shows that have become like iconic, and these like almost gathering spaces for queer people that I doubt were ever intended to be, for a queer audience, or be queer. But it is kind of this passing it on to the audience, and letting them make of it what they will, and it can become this escape, in a lot of ways. Which, interestingly, I think that I saw the TV Glow is going to be for a lot of people, including myself, as like this really important kind of seminal piece of just queer cinema, that I think is going to be very resonant for a lot of people.
I don't know if it's going to be an essential piece of, liminal cinema in my canon, despite the
Sure.
fact that I do really like it. But what I like about the movie a lot is that, as you said, it has this very specific queer tone. Obviously, like, the director is queer, like the main characters are supposed to be queer. But what I like about the movie is that it doesn't feel like it shields that. It definitely has a sense of, there is a more universal language to the way the main
Yeah.
character develops, and that any identity that someone has that makes them feel marginalized in any way, the movie is applicable to that. It doesn't say that queerness is the only thing that this film is talking about, and I
Yeah.
respected it for that as well, because I think that a lot of American movies about queer people, often aren't directed by queer people. I think that's, part of the issue, but I think that often that becomes the central focus of the film and
Mhm.
becomes almost the plot line of the film. And I Saw the TV Glow doesn't do that.
It's
And
more
it's the type of
evocative of
film.
the feeling
Right, and
rather
it
than
doesn't, and it's not really about the identity even. It's more so the
no.
feeling, and I found that to be really interesting in that it has these super universal feelings while also being so niche, because it is a
Yeah.
really, really specific movie. It's really singular in its structure and in its characters and how it sort of
I mean, yeah, it plays
allows
with a
the
lot of, like,
audience to
B-movie
digest it.
tropes and,
Yeah,
like,
exactly,
it
but
feels
also
like
it has
it
so
feels
much
like a TV show
bisexual
at
lighting.
points.
It
You're
has a
right,
lot of
yeah, it has that
bisexual lighting, so of course
yeah,
it's gonna be, explicitly clear in that way, just alone
yeah,
from the look of it. But I like that it is very interpretive and, it's stagnant in a way that I liked more than World's Fair, because it definitely had more movement to it. It went over many years as well, so it's differently structured. But I
mhm.
appreciated that my favorite part of the movie was a conversation between the main two characters just on the bleachers when they were in high
Yeah,
school.
that's excellent.
That was
Yeah,
actually my favorite scene in the movie, because it was this slice of life moment that almost felt like it was a part of something else, but came back to itself by the end and reflected. I think that scene honestly has the thesis of the film
well, yeah,
in
it's
it.
it's it's actually being present in life and not disassociated and not detached from reality. It's one of the few moments where I think that the characters maybe aren't feeling like they're watching themselves from the third person.
And that's why I think it has. I think that scene shows the thesis of the movie, and it's that this sort of clash of identity. There are just a few brief moments in a person's life, whether they're queer or marginalized in some way or another, where they feel like they can be themselves without being watched or without being judged. And I feel like that was one of those moments where these two people, one of them is being very open about their identity and expressing it in a very clear way, and the other one isn't, but is still showing a sign of respect and
I
interest,
think it's almost
and is
like
related.
I don't think Owen even knows at that point
No, but there's
what
definitely a
makes him
sense
tell.
of there's a gear turning in Owen's head
Yeah,
during that scene, which lets us know that the connection isn't just because they're talking or because they had known
yeah.
each other previously.
There is this underlying thing which I think you can see in some of the best of queer cinema, a lot of communication without words. Like that's one of my favorite things about Celine Sciamma's work. Really, I think that her use of just eyes as a form of communication is brilliant, and I think that Schoenbrun does very similar things of just through body language. There's almost a separate conversation happening. On a subliminal level, which I think is just brilliant. And I mean, I think it goes without saying, I think both of the two leads, fantastic work from both of them. I mean, on a technical level, like the cinematography is gorgeous. Some of the stuff that they do with the lighting is incredible. Like it's really well edited. The makeup work is really, really good. Like
Yeah.
on a
I
technical
know
level,
it's
the
really
movie is
hard. I know this is a really obnoxious thing to say, but I do think that, digital cinematography looks worse than film. And I think
yeah.
that films from the past 10 years, especially, don't look very good. But
Mhm.
this is one of the examples of making digital cinematography actually look authentic and good.
Yeah.
And and
Well, because it
that's why
embraces it. I feel like a lot of contemporary digital cinematography tries to pretend like it's film.
and this
And
doesn't at
you
all,
have to treat it
and it
differently.
also doesn't. It is kind of simple in the cinematography. There's a simplicity to it that's why it works.
But it's like a
But
bold
it
simplicity.
goes very
Yeah.
right. It goes one specific way, but it isn't complex in that way. And I think that that's why it's so effective, and that's why
Yeah.
the tone is established so quickly, because it knows what it wants to be, and it doesn't want to be. It doesn't want to try and trick you into being something else. It's super upfront.
No, yeah, yeah. And I think that that's necessary for the film to have such a strong identity because it's a film about how abstracted and fractured the character's identity is. And it's
Mm,
nice to kind of
mhm.
have this guiding force of Jane in a way, kind of pulling the strings. Because otherwise, I feel like it would feel too chaotic, and we wouldn't have this clear sense of vision behind all of the chaos.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay, I'm gonna get personal. I wrote a lot on Letterboxd.
Okay.
So I wrote a lot on Letterboxd. You may have seen it. I put it up on Twitter. So I am a person who has dealt a lot with mental health issues, particularly over the last 4 to 5 years of my life, with depression and eh, like at points like thoughts of self-harm and things that like I don't know what I can say without getting demonetized or whatever on YouTube, because YouTube doesn't like people to talk about this for some reason. But I for very extended periods have disassociated from myself. It's a feeling that I'm very familiar with, like feeling like I am watching my life from the third person, or almost like somebody else is like playing the part of my life, and I'm just kind of watching them do it. And I feel like I have no connection to my life. And it's a really, really strange feeling because you are obviously alive and you are obviously moving through things, and time is still passing, and that isn't time that you're ever going to be able to get back, right? You're those parts of your life have just existed, but almost through the lens of somebody else. And it's such a strange feeling, and it's really hard and difficult to describe to people, which is why I'm attempting to describe it to a lot of people right now for whatever reason. But if you've felt like that before, you know what it's like. And if you don't, I don't know. But looking back on memories and stuff, it just like there's entire years where I just everything blurs together, and I don't even feel like it. Yeah, it was me that was creating those memories. And it just kind of feels like a watercolor brush was just painted over everything, and everything's just kind of blurry and watery, which comes a lot from very intense feelings of dysphoria and of depression and all these types of things. All of this to say that Jane Schoenbrun's work in this film, I think, is one of the most like accurate, visceral depictions of this feeling of dysphoria of yourself and your body, and feeling like your mind and your body are two completely detached things, that have no connection to each other. And I honestly don't know how Jane did that, but to make it feel so authentic to such a specific state of mind. Like I think I was probably sobbing for the majority of this film's runtime. There is a point in the film immediately after Phoebe Bridgers shows up, which is usually when I start crying anyways. But like there's a conversation after that where Maddie starts describing this like very intense feeling of detachment from herself, and all in reference to the pink opaque, which I think is just in many senses on a subliminal level, it is just like this metaphor for this place for that your mind goes when it when you aren't with yourself, and it is this weird natural response where it does feel good to disassociate from situations when everything is just so overwhelming and you're just spiraling to the point where like you aren't accomplishing anything other than making yourself feel more depressed and upset with yourself. And it's just this repeated thing, and then you'll disassociate, and it is this nice thing where you don't actually have to be alive. You don't have to feel like you're actually alive, but also it's a kind of scary thing where you don't feel like you're alive.
Yeah.
And
It
it's that
shows
really
that
strange
those
paradox.
moments are kind of necessary to living. Like, if you don't
Right.
dissociate every once in a while, if you don't kind of like pause yourself and kind of snap out of
Like
it,
I this
then
is
you
gonna
might
sound really
break
dramatic.
down.
I genuinely don't know if I would be alive if I didn't disassociate at some points in my life.
That
Just
does sound very dramatic,
it
but
sounds I know it sounds
I
incredibly
understand why you're
dramatic,
saying that.
but there have been points in my life where I was in very dark places and thought very strongly about doing things that I know I would have regretted. And yeah, like disassociate definitely helped. But then, I just think back, and I feel like I didn't even like I don't feel attached to entire chunks of my childhood. And particularly now, like I just finished high school, I'm going to be going to college, and I've just been thinking a lot about my childhood and a lot about how that's the only chance at childhood I'm ever going to have. Like you don't ever get to have another shot at childhood. And my parents are great, and I feel like I do on paper have a very good childhood, and I almost feel incredibly guilty for not living in a lot of it. And feeling detached, even though there's nothing I can do about that, which then will cause me to spiral more, and then it's a whole thing, and then I have to do. Yeah, it's yeah. And again, all of this to say, like within that conversation, within when it brings into Pink Opaque, and it was such a surreal experience watching this film, particularly the second half of this film. And Jane is using the language of film and just, film form to evoke these feelings in the audience. And it's really strange to have that feeling, like it evoked when it is something that I have so regularly felt and so often associated with really negative and dark points in my life. Like there were so many memories that were brought up in this film that like I had completely forgotten about, whether by choice or just just pure forgetting. And I think that's done through both this form and this expression of disassociation, but also in a lot of like the quieter moments. Like there are some points that just feel like they're existing in like these liminal spaces where it's just allowing your mind to go to these places, so that way your brain is in that place when it does get very heavy and intense, and can play with kind of your emotions in that way, which like it wasn't the most pleasant experience while it was happening, but it again, it did feel very cathartic, and I can't commend Jane enough for being able to do that. Like it's one of the most just surreal, insane experiences I've had while watching a film. And I mean, obviously I think one of the big quotes that people bring up with this film, and it isn't even something that's really said, I think, but it's just seen in chalk, is there is still time. I've been seeing thrown around a lot. And that's, again, we were kind of talking about beforehand, this is a very intense film, and it was at points like it's incredibly disturbing. And again, not because it's necessarily scary, but because it is a coming of age film about never coming of age and never actually finding that part of yourself. And I don't know if I've really found who I am or what I am, or, existing within whatever labels. Like I don't entirely know what to do with that at this point, but I feel like I'm getting more okay with being okay with that, and being okay with not, entirely knowing, and just kind of getting there at my own pace, because I it is a very dangerous thing, I think, to try to force yourself into some sort of identity that you feel like you aren't. And that the film kind of turns into a cautionary tale of that, of if you don't take that time, and you don't, like at a certain point there won't be any more time, and you'll just kind of be stuck in this shell of yourself, never really having found who you are. And that's the real horror of this film. And I don't know, like it felt like kind of looking down this path that I very easily could have gone if I wasn't, able to be a bit more honest with myself. So yeah, and it's, I don't know, those last couple minutes are really, really brutal.
It's a
But
really
again,
strong film. It
but
has
again,
really
it
strong
feels
imagery.
cathartic. Like it does feel
Yeah, but in an
nice. Like
unnerving way.
yeah,
The
like
connection and the catharsis makes the thing is, you go into this movie knowing it's gonna be depressing, but the
mhm.
connections and the catharsis that the film exemplifies don't make it, like, sad. They actually make
No.
it more dimensional and memorable, and I wouldn't describe those parts as joyous, of course, but
Mhm.
you don't leave the film feeling like, I didn't leave the film feeling upset. And I think that that's in
I mean,
part because
I'm gonna sound
it's so
dramatic. I
intense.
just I left the film just feeling happy that I was, like, alive and even able to grapple with my emotions in this way, because there were points where I just, like, didn't, feel any emotions. I didn't have any connection with my emotions, and I just felt happy that I was able to, like, feel this film on such a visceral level. Like, it felt good to go through this experience. Like,
Yeah, no, and I
it
think
felt
that's
really good.
important.
Like, it
I think it
felt.
probably felt important for you to go through this experience.
Yeah, no, genuinely, especially at the point in my life where I'm at, where it is this, point where my childhood is ending. Like this is, I'm leaving for college in 2 months. It genuinely felt really important. I'm just gonna read out what I wrote on Letterboxd. The film is a tangible articulation of every intangible emotion that I couldn't feel for a lot of my life. Like, and I think that plays very directly on the themes of the film, of it being about this tangible art that people can connect with. like this genuinely feels like a very major work. And obviously you can say I'm biased because I connected with this on such a deep level, but this is a review and it's my opinion, so that's how it works. Every review is biased. Every review of any movie you watch is biased. It's about people's opinion. And this is genuinely, like, I mean, it's life-changing type stuff. Like, this is something that just throughout my day-to-day life just will be a thing that I refer to in many ways. And just that idea that there is still time. Like, I constantly will feel like I'm always running out of time to be myself, and running out of time to like find something important about myself, and to be who I am. And I don't know, like it's very simple in that way, but it's done in such a direct and profound way. Like it's so brilliantly executed. Like I don't know, I think it isn't just me. Like, I reading a lot of other people's thought, like I think that this is going to be a really, really important film for a lot of people. Like, it's going to be a generation defining film for a lot of, I mean, not primarily queer audiences, but I think just audiences in general. Like, yeah, it's important, but also like just so brilliant on every level as a piece of cinema. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think it's a really seminal work. And I mean, Jane Schoenbrun is forever going to be one of my favorite people that I'll never meet. Like,
You don't know that. You really don't know that.
I don't know that, but I mean, just one of the most, I think, important people. Like, both of their films so far
And
have hit
only
me.
2 films, so you
I
have a
know,
lot
and
of
both of
time
their
to go
films
with that.
have hit me, I think, at such a perfect point in my life where I really needed them the most. Yeah, no, I think this film is really, really special. And I cannot recommend watching it enough. Yeah, I don't know if you have any other thoughts, but
No, I mean, I don't have as much to say as you do.
I know this is,
I don't
yeah.
as strongly, but I do really love the movie, and it definitely surprised me because it's not that I didn't think I would like it, I just didn't really go in with many thoughts. I didn't really know anything about it before. Like, I was
Mhm.
so shocked when Phoebe Bridgers showed up and you were like, "You didn't know that?" So
Yeah,
I wasn't really,
I
this wasn't on
yeah,
my radar. But I definitely wanna watch it again. I think it's the type of
I
movie
can't
that
wait
you
to watch
kind
it
of
again.
should watch again. It's super detail-oriented, and I think
It's
that
weirdly going to become a comfort movie, for me, I think, where it is just
that's
this.
that's
But like, we're all going to the
oh
World's Fair
boy.
as a comfort movie for me.
Oh boy.
It is like it is this place where I feel like
No,
I
I
can
mean, I
confront.
can't judge for that. It's just
Like,
intense.
it is, but it's a place where I feel like I can healthily confront that part of my brain in a way that
Mhm.
feels controlled and tangible. And if I'm ever feeling like it's the same reason why I listen to, like, Phoebe Bridgers and stuff when I'm sad, because it feels like a healthy way to confront those emotions, where I can channel it all into this tangible piece of art rather than trying to like handle them purely on my own, because if that happens, then that typically in past experience has led to bad things. And obviously I talk to people, I talk to my parents, I'm in therapy, but people aren't always available. So I
Yeah,
do
of
think
course.
that art is a good way to kind of just be able to process your emotions while also keeping a healthy separation between them. So yeah, this movie's really good.
It really is. And
I
I think it would pair well with 8th grade if you watch 8th grade first and then this
mhm,
afterwards as a, very dramatic double feature, but I think that
yeah,
they sort of there are these 2 films about teenagers kind of, and do it in a way that doesn't not only doesn't hold back, but is super raw and intimate in a non-Hollywood way.
for sure.
And I think that they sort of are in this one's obviously more surreal and science fictiony,
Mhm,
but they both have this really grounded, intense, visceral feeling to them. And
absolutely.
one of them's more humorous and light and the other one is more dramatic, but they definitely pair well together. And you're
For sure.
staying up late and plan on pulling an all-nighter, this is a good double feature. I think so.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, No, as I said, I think it's a generational film. I think it's gonna be one of the films of the decade. Like I think that this is going to be looked back on as one of the most important films for our generation, and I genuinely mean that. At least a certain subsect of our generation. Like, yeah. As far as a rating, I don't think it's a surprise that this is my first 10 of the year. It's my first 10 since Zone of Interest. Yeah, no, we got a 10 on the board for me this year. I think it's perfect. I really, really do.
What a shocker.
Yeah, yeah. What are you feeling for
I had
rating?
no idea. I had no idea that you were looking forward to this movie.
I know, I know. Yeah. What are you feeling for rating?
Oh, I don't know. I don't really rate things much anymore.
Yeah, you do.
But well, like sometimes, but probably like a 4 out of 5. Probably
So
could
8.
probably get bumped up if I rewatch it, maybe. But I'm not gonna feel this as deeply as you will, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
You're not as mentally ill.
Ooh, you're mentally ill.
I'm mentally ill. Okay, that's it, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This has been a review that I've enjoyed doing a lot. And I hope that you like.
Because you went to the deepest depths of
No, we
sadness.
did not go to my deepest depths. Well, I don't know what will get me to my deepest depths, but we got like maybe 70% there. But yeah. But no, thank you everybody so much for watching this, and let us know your thoughts below, because I think it's definitely fun that deserves a conversation around it.
Yes.
But yeah, so plenty more reviews coming soon. We'll have Inside Out 2. We'll have Pixar tier list and Linklater tier list. Lots of fun stuff. But until then, thank you everybody for watching. Stay safe and goodbye.